Okay, if I could get the first slide, please. Hey, first of all, thank you all for being here as we get ready to talk to you a little bit about Pacific Pathways and what it means for us to campaign. What it really is for us, though, is a recognition of the fact that there is a certain end that we look to as we continue to campaign through the Pacific. That end is no war. That's what the end of the thing is. There are a certain set of means which are largely set. And what we try to do is nest the ways coming from the NDS on down with what it is that we do in the Pacific as we campaign. And one of the ways I'd like to point to you first is within USRPAC, the Theater Army, these are the ways that we look at doing certain things. Within the core, what we call these things are the three kings. We're talking about posture, we're talking about protection, and we're talking about sustainment. Those are the things that are absolutely necessary in order for the Army to campaign and campaign successfully in the Pacific. Again, when we look at the things that the NDS says, as I look at my core, there's only so much that we can actually accomplish in the core. The core of the Theater Army, though, is my core as the operational headquarters. When we campaign, we spend between 8 to 10 months out of the year in the region. And why are we there in the region? If I asked Brigadier General retired Otto Liller what we're doing in the region, he would say, we're campaigning. If I asked Major General Marcus Evans what we're doing in the region, we're not just exercising, he would say we're campaigning. And whether that's with his 25th Infantry Division or the 7th Infantry Division or the 11th Airborne Division, what we do is campaign. That's what an Army does. An Army does things that we normally term campaign quality. That implies that we can be there for a long period of time. That implies that we come with mass. That implies that we have set objectives when we go into the region. We're not just there to go to Thailand. We're not just there to be in Bangkok on the weekend. We're there because we have a friend, partner, or ally, and this mesh network of friends, partners, and allies that help us to accomplish the things that the Army needs to have done. One of those things is we've got to build interior lines. When you talk to General Flynn, he talks about three things that our adversary in the region has that we don't have. One of those things is interior lines. Another of those things is mass. And then the final thing would be magazine depth. How do we get around that? Well, we get around it by the fact that we have this network, this mesh network, if you will. And if anybody set up internet in your home, you know what a mesh network looks like and what it does. We have this network of friends, partners, and allies in the region that allow us to achieve mass. By exercising and campaigning, we allow ourselves to establish interior lines, which take best benefit of the things that are already there. We have forces in Japan, we have forces in Korea. This changes the shape of things. General, good to see you again. Kurt, great to see you. But that's what we're doing when we go out. But the only way we can get that done is, again, back to those three kings, is through protection and sustainment. Those allow us to be campaign quality when we go in the region. Next slide, please. An example of this, when we look at the scale and scope of the things that we're doing, is what happened most recently during Talisman Sabre. Starting from the west coast of the United States there, I don't know why I expected it to be on this side of the slide, but it's really all the way over here on this side. We've got, if you remember that slide I showed you, there are lots of things that the First Corps is expected to do. Some of those things are foundational to what we do every day. It's the 4 focus areas that our chief talks about. It's the 3 ways that USRPAC gives us. It's the things that are said in the NDS that direct us. And it's the 4 wins that we get from FORCECOM. While we were engaged in the region forward, we also had an EDRI go on in Indiana, while the Corps proper, is some 7,000 miles away in Australia. We can only do that because we have, again, this network of friends, partners, and allies, and we have quite possibly some of the best sustainers and medical professionals in the Corps that allow us to do that we might achieve campaign objectives. The easy part of this is showing you this map and the distances we're dealing with, where a Corps acts as a CJTF, a Combined Joint Task Force, given a mission and working alongside our friends, partners, and allies to achieve the objectives of that mission. 6 discrete operations took place, everything from as far as J-POTS, Joint Petroleum Over the Shore, to J-LOTS, to an amphibious operation, to a JFAO, amphibious and airborne. All these things take place, but they can only happen because we can sustain ourselves when we get in the region. And that's the real heart of what you're going to hear today from the commander of the 8th TSC and the commander of 18th MedCom. They're going to give you far more information. If you want technical stuff, they've got it. What I'm telling you is what we've got to do and how we've got to do it. And the only way we're going to be successful in moving forward in the region is if we continue to drive to be beside our partners in the region. That's the only way we'll be successful. And again, the end is set. The end is no war. The means are what we have apportioned to the Indo-Pacific in terms of forces. But the ways, those are set as well. Thank you for your time and attention. I'll pass off now to the commander of the 8th TSC.
Thanks, sir. My name is Jared Helwig. I'm the commander of the 8th Theater Sustainment Command, headquartered out of Hawaii. And I'm going to talk to you just briefly to kind of talk about what General Brunson kind of initially said in terms of the sustainment piece and what we were able to do in Operation Pathways this year. I would say Operation Pathways this year was unique from a logistics perspective, and that it allowed us to really, one of the focus areas was on sustainment as part of the pathways. I think most logisticians and most echelons of sustainment will tell you that individual exercises, when they're done, don't necessarily stress the enterprise of logistics, particularly at the operational and strategic level. The capacity that those headquarters are built for is larger than what one single exercise can usually put onto a system. But when you pull together multiple exercises, such as Operation Pathways this year, from a logistics standpoint, when you take all of those exercises and look at them holistically from a logistics and sustainment perspective, then your sustainment as a warfighting function, your logistics as a warfighting function is able to actualize and pull on all of those threads that are required to really get after the learning objectives as logisticians that we need to be successful and to understand the theater and to really set conditions for those joint interior lines and build out that architecture that we know that if we don't rehearse in competition will be very difficult to execute in crisis and conflict. And so as part of Operation Pathways and specifically for Talisman Sabre, we were able to do all 3 echelons. From Marcus Evans and 25th ID's 25th Sustainment Brigade to 1st Corps and General Brunson and the 593rd ESC to the TSC, we were able to take all 3 of those echelons and put them in Australia and rehearse the critical portions that we would need to do to connect the dots from a sustainment perspective. And that was very helpful for us. And very helpful for our Australian partners. And part of what we did for this Talisman Sabre as well, which is unique to this year, was establish a joint theater sustainment component with our Australian and joint partners. Because as you know, in the Pacifics in particular, but throughout the logistics that we have to do and Army support to other services means we always have to have the joint force as part of this conversation, and they always need to be integrated into each of those echelons. And so as part of Talisman Sabre and Operation Pathways, we were able to build that connective tissue, pull that team in and work collaboratively right next to each other and solve a multitude of problems earlier than maybe we would have not been able to do had we not had us sitting next to each other, learning from each other. So I think that's a great takeaway from this year as well. General Brunson talked about the importance of our allies and partners in this region. And many times in exercises, we focus on the maneuvers portion of that collaboration. And what we were able to do because of the prioritization that General Flynn and USAPAC put on logistics this year is rehearse that integration with our partners and those echelons together. General Brunson mentioned JLOTS and JPOTS, two activities in our theater that are really important. Joint petroleum over the shore, figuring out how to move fuel from the sea onto land to support both our allies and our joint force, and then joint logistics over the shore, rehearsing the movement of equipment from larger vessels onto the shore in support of any kind of operation that might need to happen. It was a great opportunity for our teams to pull all that together, particularly at distance, where we had to anticipate all of the fog and friction that you might expect when you have to project Transcom vessels, forces from FORSCOM showing up, and then our own organic forces onto a meeting location and then discharge all of that equipment. We were able to use some pre-positioned stock to get after that and learn how that pre-positioned stock is effective in our region. And we were able to really build on some great lessons that I think will really help us as we go forward to continue the campaigning in logistics going forward. And then because of the expanded scope of Operation Pathways as well, maintain some of that equipment in places like Australia and other locations throughout the theater to give us that capability and help us have kind of a starting point in the future to maintain our presence and to be there and available if required at any point in time. And with that, couldn't do that without our great partners in the MedCom, and so I'll hand it off to Paula to fill us in on what she did as part of the medical picture.
All right, thanks, Jared. So I'm Paula Lodi. I command the 18th Medical Command, USAPAC's Theater Enabling Command for Medical. And I am really grateful to be a part of this Warrior Corner and talk about what the Theater Medical Command does to enable USAPAC's campaigning in the Indo-Pacific. So this slide really just gives you a little bit more or different view of the battle space and the operational challenges in the Indo-Pacific. And so what it depicts is that the Indo-Pacific is 20 times the size of EUCOM. And that's a huge battle space and reiterates the point that General Brunson was making earlier. And so if you are the Theater Medical Command for the Indo-Pacific and you are about force health protection and health service support, and you can envision doing humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, and combat operations, then it matters to you that 60% of the world's population is in your region. And if you think that these operations might involve time-sensitive inter- and intra-theater patient movement and medical resupply operations, that it matters to you that it's a non-contiguous region where 50% of the Earth's ocean exists. And so that just sets a scene for the complication of doing medical operations and sustainment operations in the Indo-Pacific. So the Theater Medical Command's lines of effort, or our strategic approach, is most simply stated as we exercise, we support that campaign plan through Operation Pathways, we engage with our partners through global health engagements, and we experiment so that modernization and continuous transformation can occur in our battle space. And so I'll move on to the experimentation, or how we support the campaign plan towards the Operation Pathways approach. We establish a dynamic force posture through our campaigning in the region, and the Theater Medical Command provides real-world health service support and force health protection to all forces operating across the region during Operation Pathways. We validate the health service support plans for the operation. We maintain situational awareness throughout Pathways so that we get skilled in distributed C2. We monitor and provide reach-back opportunity for rotational forces by allowing them medical resupply avenues of approach, rotating blood stocks that are due to expire, and facilitating any agreements with host nation facilities or, when needed, patient evacuation while those operational campaigning is going on. And so it's not insignificant what the Theater Medical Command is able to do just from Oahu for the 40-plus exercises that make up pathways. You see on the slide there, if you can see, there's a number of locations that we physically put the Theater Medical Command on the ground to demonstrate that we are deployable. And where General Flynn talks about land power being joint power, we know that Army medicine, 50% of the Department of Defense's uniformed medical force is in Army medicine, and 70% of that 50% is operational. And so in addition to the real-world support that we provide, we also use pathways as our opportunity to exercise our own campaign plan and integrate echelon above division medical units into the battle space as a form of rehearsal so that we know that our total Army medicine force is prepared to deploy and win if called upon. In addition to our support to the exercise campaign plan, we complement with a global health engagement strategy. And the command has tripled its global health engagement strategy efforts over the last year. And we typically engage with partners and allies that are not primary audiences during the Pathways campaign plan to improve access in the region. You can see on the slide, if you can see the green stars depict where we have a sustained presence, where we're building on our relationships, and the yellow stars indicate where we have new agreements in place or we're starting new initiatives to expand access in the region with allies and partners. This past year, we oversaw 200 engagements, and the 18th MedCom was specifically responsible for execution of 15 of those, and we leveraged reach back to U.S. Army MedCom, we leveraged reach back to MRDC and our Med COE down in San Antonio to bring the full complement of strategic enabling capability into those engagements. Thirdly, experimentation. So we've got a robust experimentation program that complements where we're exercising and where we're having engagements with our partners and allies. Because this is AUSA, and the intent is to bring industry forward and help us with some of our challenges in our region. I'll highlight a couple of our experimentation opportunities and efforts. So first with blood, we've got a range of things that we're doing with blood, from research and development with blood products, to blood sharing agreements with our partners, to innovative ways on how to deliver and distribute and store blood on the battlefield, to protocols for expeditionary blood and our walking blood bank programs. All four of those are pillars of how we're getting after what we know is going to be a significant challenge for us in our theater. Second, telemedicine helps us bridge the tyranny of distance, and we routinely reach back to Navy Medical Center San Diego to leverage them as a regional hub during exercises and during global health engagements to ensure that we have mechanisms in place and the networks to support telemedicine when needed. Finally, the Prolonged Care Augmentation Detachment is an organizational design. It's an operational unit that is intended to address contested airway. And so we leveraged our JPMRC, our Regional Joint Multinational Training Center, to partner a PCAD with a Forward Resuscitative Surgical Detachment last year to put it forward on the battlefield in support of the Brigade Combat Team to validate its capability and the critical enabling that it will do should our airways get contested, should we not be able to evacuate off the battlefield, should we have to hold casualties longer than necessary. And so 3 pillars of our experimentation. The blood, earlier this year we rolled out a booth at LandPack and highlighted our experimentation in this space, and then tomorrow at the MedCom kiosk you'll have the opportunity, if you're interested, to see more about the technical innovations with blood and other things the 18th MedCom is doing in that space. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for letting me share with you a little bit about what the Theater Medical Command of U.S. Army Pacific is doing, and I'll look forward to the questions and discussion.
Sir, first of all, thank all 3 of you for sharing that much with us. I worked at the Pentagon in 2015 and when Pathways started, and it's just great to see the ongoing success and how much you guys are building the interior lines we need to succeed against China. One of the things campaigning describes and shows us is the way things we're getting wrong. Can you share with us anything that we've, not like big blast, but anything we've got wrong in our campaigning over time?
I think that's really a simple question. I think everybody in here has either dated someone or married someone. Would that be an accurate statement? Show of hands, please. Okay, relationships never work when they're transactional, do they? They don't. They do not work. Transactional relationships don't work. So what we found is some of the things that Paul is talking about, some of the things that Jared is talking about are absolutely important. We can't be over here at Cobra Gold and say, we'll see you next year. There have to be iterative steps taken as we build these relationships that allow us to stay engaged in the region. That's the power of Pathways, is our ability to engage in the region. So what we have, are you waving at me or are you waving at somebody? Okay, well I'm gonna say hey, because my mama would want me to say hey. All right, so what we found is there have to be things that tie us to the region more closely. We cannot afford to be transactional or episodic. A relationship is. So what we do, for example, in the operational realm, if you will, we have the Indo-Pacific Motorized Forum, which brings, last year we had 13 partner nations from the region meet us between exercises. And what we found is we're able to share lessons learned amongst one another. The height of what we do is human and procedural interoperability. Sometimes we'll default to the technological interoperability and say, you need to have the same piece of kit that we have so that we can now be interoperable. I would tell you that nothing could be further from the truth. What we're doing is building relationships that'll carry us forward. Again, mass, magazine depth, interior lines. The only way we get about that is with our network of friends, partners, and allies, and building relationships, human interoperability, that's going to carry us when things get real hard. Did that answer your question? Okay. Anybody else?
Sir, Dan Clark, National War College. You all have presented some pretty amazing ways and some pretty impressive means. And you highlighted and what you defined as the end as no war. What I missed and would love to hear more on is how do using those means and employing those ways get you to that end? What's the connective tissue that leads to no war?
The problem statement, truthfully, is, first of all, until the National War College wins Jim Thorpe Day, I don't know that you should even be asking questions up here. Go Carlisle. So let's look at it this way, right? If you want there to be no war, then what we've got to do is we've got to nest these ways in a manner in which we demonstrate combat credible forces west of the IDL. All we care about is that somebody says, not today, not today. That's what we care about. So by doing this campaign, and I'm going to hand this thing off, but by doing this campaign, we're able to demonstrate not only capability, but credible capability. our capacities are increased with our partners, right? So you take an infantry company from the US and an infantry company from Thailand, and an infantry company from Indonesia, and now you've got nations involved in this thing, and they're vested in it. But I think that my partners here have some other ways that we not only project combat credible forces, but combat credible capabilities that are unique to the United States Army and our ability to campaign.
Just like the infantry platoons that were mentioned below, partnering in logistics is another area where I think we have a lot of capacity and desire in our theater for them, our partner nations, to learn and grow and become more interoperable. And the more interoperable we get in that space, where our systems do align, we're able to exchange everything from mechanics to parts to systems development. We all win. And so that also deters, because that shows that not just the presence during the pathways, but the systemic presence in industry connective tissue, in logistics connective tissue, in transportation and distribution conversations, where we're able to use other nations' capabilities interchangeably, really, I think, has a huge positive effect. Pathways gives us that first step into it, and as we continue to develop it and maintain it, we're able to maintain that whole presence over the long term. Paul?
Yeah, and I would just add really a blending comment for the two questions. The fact that every partner in our region is different, across the dime or across whatever construct you want to put on it, their capabilities are different. Where the interchangeable and interoperability sits is very different, vastly different amongst the partners. And so the approach you take really has to be a tailored one, and that sounds intuitive until you're out amongst 24 different partners, getting an appreciation for the magnitude of what interoperability means. Interoperable for what and in what way? And then where I highlighted the global health engagement strategy as a complementary effort to the campaigning, it really does become a bit of a Rubik's Cube to make sure that we are getting after the right ends in every space to have no war.
Hi, John Klein, Johnson Controls. I have a question, General Hell, meaning for you, and it's about the data. As I imagine the amount of people and equipment that has to be processed through the A-pods and the S-pods to get to the area of operation, how does data play a role, and is facility readiness a concern? Thanks.
Yeah, data plays a huge role, and understanding that data and synthesizing it in something that's meaningful is really important to us. The combined joint theater sustainment component that we built in Australia, and we did a medical one as well. We co-located both of them. One of the main objectives of that was to track that data and turn it into a meaningful COP that we'd be able to use, both for us, our joint partners, and our allies, to be able to see and make adjustments to things when the physics of sustainment, played a role. When that ship that you were counting on to arrive on one day, is delayed by a couple of days, there's the actual time, and then there's what does that mean? And so, right now we do a lot of that with physical interpretation and human interpretation, but the more we can move into being able to build that COP and get it more predictive, the better.
And just one other thing on data. Rhett, raise your hand. So what Rhett was able to do with some 17 nations on our network was build a mission partner environment during our exercise in Australia. What that provides us is the ability to share amongst our partners at the right classification using UB keys, which allows us to do basically sensitive but unclassified, and able to push data across. Because what Jared's talking about is a COP. If I have the COP and I'm the COP owner and you can't see it, but we're supposed to be partnering together, that's not good. So what we're trying to do is find inventive ways to leverage what we have, because the network's the center of everything that we're going to do, especially as it relates to data. We've got to be able to move it from A to B. We've got to understand that data, and then we've got to be able to shape it so we can make decisions. How much better would we be if our partners can be involved in those decisions we have to make? Yeah. So Rhett Burroughs is who you need to go find. That's R-E-T-T. And then you can see his name on his blouse there. All right.
Hey, sir. Ray Compton, fellow with LMI. Great to see you again. You know, I had the opportunity of being part of Pacific Pathways, and one of the most important part that I saw, and I would really like to get that in depth from y'all, is how the schoolhouses and all of the commands were there to work a whole of service solution to get to the end.
Yeah, I can start off on that. So, where's James Jones? There he is. He's our Medical Center of Excellence, COE, CDID, Concept Development. And they have been incredibly instrumental in forward positioning teams with us as we execute global health engagements and campaign across the Pacific to make sure that the concepts are being integrated forward so that the experimentation occurs in the region so that the development is region relevant, and bring that knowledge back to the schoolhouse so that the design and capability connects full circle to the resourcing that occurs in DC.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is we talked a little bit about the Joint Pacific Multinational Readiness Center. What we try to do is bring, and if you're from a COE here, we're inviting you again. We do these in Alaska, austere, cold, hard. And we also do it in the Pacific proper in Hawaii, across the islands. So there are tremendous lessons that can be learned from our schoolhouses that we can then put into education. 5 years ago, I knew little, cared little about the Pacific. But now I'm fully vested in all things that go on in the Pacific. And I would respectfully submit to you that after 20 years of a GWAT, that's probably the same. And what I would also tell you, Mr. Compton, is ignorance is not a problem. Willful ignorance is a problem. And so we don't want to be ignorant to things that we ought to know. So we try to pull the schoolhouses in so that we can demonstrate proven capability with these two great professionals that we have here, but not only them, but the soldiers that they lead, who know things that others don't, and we've got to get that out there. So there's two ways we do it. One, on the operation/rehearsal, and then the other side is in training, so that we continue to build readiness. We do in this region, unlike any place else I've ever seen in 32 years. We continue to build readiness, but we've got to bring that institutional, the schoolhouse side of things into what we're doing so that we can continue to teach. I don't think we're exactly right yet, but we're more right than we were a year ago and a year before that.
Yeah, I would. Stereo. No. I would add to that. So this year as well, we had Unified Pacific War Game Series that allowed us to, and we brought the COEs and the schoolhouses into that. That allowed us to look at it, you know, from the top down, and then with PAX Century and some of our environment like that at the joint level allowed us to, you know, play with it a little bit more, and then we are actually putting those systems in action in Australia and in other places in our region was just so critical because, as has been mentioned here, the capabilities that have been developed and the doctrine that's been built has got to survive the environment that we have in the Pacific. And so until you actually take the assault hose line out and put it in place and see how that works and whether the Navy system actually connects into the Army system at the high water mark, you'll never really know. And when we do that in kind of a static environment, that's one thing. But when you do it out in a very remote place in Australia, it really helps us then inform back to the schoolhouse and what needs to change on the systems we currently have, and then maybe shapes also some of the information about the future systems we're looking at. And maybe the things that we thought we needed, we don't need, or maybe there's some portions of that that we should modify based on the physics of the problem in the theater.
Hi, Aaron Matthew Lariosa. I'm just wondering, because Pacific major distances, how has operating with Transcom and your partners with the Navy been like?
Yeah, so we're tied at the hip with Transcom. We couldn't do anything without having very open communication and dialogue and daily conversations with them. What we learned in Operation Pathways is the importance of describing the operational effects that we want to the strategic enterprise when it comes to movement, right? So I alluded to the fact that, you know, a delay in a vessel isn't just a scheduling slip, but it can have operational impacts or impacts on the exercise. And sometimes those effects aren't fully understood throughout the whole enterprise. And so this year, I think we made some steps forward in that regard, and going forward, like right after this AUSA, I'm going to Transcom to sit down and do an AAR on this same thing to talk about how in 24 and 25 we take those lessons learned and continue to develop out ways to keep each other informed and make those decisions that need to be made and describe the operational effects so that everybody's kind of eyes wide open when it happens in the environment. The reality is no plan's going to go according to plan, so we have to just know where those inputs are to let the strategic base know to make those shifts to help us out.
Yeah, and I think just one caveat, General Flynn's infusion of medical and protection into the Unified Pacific War Game series and his approach in making sure that there's no light between us in operational planning has brought to light to Transcom the fact that there isn't a sustainment distribution plan and a patient movement evacuation plan in the Indo-Pacific, that it's all one, it's all in competition for scarce resources, and we need to come at that problem set collaboratively.
Okay, we just got the hook. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for your time and attention. Have a great day. One team.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been U.S. Army Pacific on Warriors Corner, describing Operation Pathways. Next, we will have U.S. Army Europe Africa at 2:30, where they will be covering SPPV, 20 years of making a difference in Africa.